everyone. Jim Biringer here. Welcome back. This is Around Campus College Football Podcast. We've got a special guest here for you today. Mike Richards, a good friend of mine, got me into doing this. Love to be on his show. We're talking college football today. Sportsnet 960, The Fan in Calgary. Originally, he was out on the East Coast, but he's all Calgary now. Mike, thanks for coming on doing this today.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Because most of my career, it's been split. There was 6.5 years when I was out in Calgary, and then mostly all of it in Toronto, including the last run at TSN, which was could have been good until they wrecked it. Until the people who owned it, the boneheads, the Neanderthals, those who have no idea how to run media, let alone sports media, wrecked it, ruined it, and now they've got zeros as ratings. It sucks to be you. It sucks to be stupid. So, yeah, I'm doing stuff back with Sportsnet, and Rogers still has a good feel for sports. It's, everywhere it's tight, whether you work for Fox, whether you work for ESPN, it doesn't matter. Everything got a little bit tighter. But you hope that cream does rise to the top, and we fought back, and we just had our biggest ratings period ever, actually, in our last run, up to a 15 share, males 25-54, which is a big fat number. So we're doing okay. We're doing okay. And when you first start saying, this is Mike Richards got me into something, people are like, oh God, what's he got another guy into? What has he done? Are you hanging out at the Bada Bing? Are you making some cash?
Making some cash. I'm making some cash. That's what he's got me into. He's got me making the money. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because college football playoff is here. We're going to break all the games down for you. We're going to give you the best props. We're going to break down a game. But you want to get that money. You want to get the greenbacks. Everybody wants that greenback, right? Kicking it off, rematch. Third time now they're playing. It's going to be Alabama, Oklahoma, this time in Norman. First of all, from an on-field perspective, what are you looking at before we dive into some of the props in that game?
Well, I think, there has been, as there usually is with Alabama, this feeling like it's almost like I can't say recency bias, but there is a delusion sometimes that you fall into where we just feel like it's another Saban team and they got all these players and they got a certain kind of quarterback. And this is not Saban's team. This is not the same kind of Alabama. And they sort of were a little smoke and mirrors all year long. And so when you look at some of those rumors now, Simpson is saying that he's good, like that he's good to go, and I'm like, well, that's what he's going to say. Of course, I get that, but I think both of these teams had huge inconsistencies, especially at quarterback. Even if you look at Oklahoma and John Mateer, like sometimes you wondered about him, like what kind of game were you going to get? I think that the bottom line for this game is that Oklahoma defense, which can take over, which can cause some real problems. Like, do I think that Jam Miller coming back for Bama at running back, is he going to make a difference? I don't think enough of a difference that I have sort of looked at this as a bit of a coin toss. Now I think it's Oklahoma's game to have. That means Simpson's going to have to find, Ryan Williams. But, there's a kid that has speed to burn. He's lightning in a bottle, but he can disappear. Like, they do a lot of things that just aren't consistent. And if Simpson can't get the time he needs, because he may not, then I think you look at guys like John Mateer to have not a spectacular day, because I don't think necessarily I'm looking at either of these guys as Sunday guys, quite frankly. I'm just not. There was a time where Simpson kind of was. They were like, oh, is he going to be that kind of guy? No, I don't think he is. So I take a look at, I'm trying to remember his name now, Satenya, that Isaiah Tatenia III from Oklahoma, who can he can put up a century spot on you if you're not careful, and if he gets the time. Alabama also, still big-bodied team. They can play some D, but if you ask me, I think it's probably a 3.5, maybe under a touchdown game, but I have totally flipped to Oklahoma, because I think that at this point, if I'm weighing it and I'm kind of sneaking a little into the behind the curtain, I don't know if Simpson's 100%, even though he says he does. So if it's that close, I'll take Oklahoma.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I like the breakdown of that because, again, everything says, okay, what about Ty Simpson? What about the injury? It's a back injury. Like, yeah, they've had a week off, but Like backs don't heal that quickly. And we've seen that with NFL guys. We've seen that with college guys, these backs. And Oklahoma's D is one of the best in the nation right now. And they put pressure on Simpson in the first matchup earlier in the season. So an offensive line for, Alabama was not great in the SEC championship against Georgia. And that's still a sticking point to me. And it goes back to the first game of the year when they had the worst loss probably of the season when they lost to Florida State. And Florida State took a complete nosedive. So to me, Bama isn't a playoff team, but they're there because it's Alabama, because it's the SEC champ. Oh, you can't take a loser out of the SEC championship game, can't kick them out of the playoff because then no one's going to play these games anymore. Yeah, but if you looked at it, I think you said it the best. This is a coin flip. It's a 3.5-point game because these are probably the two most inconsistent teams in the top 12 all year.
Yeah, they're in fact, if someone said, well, in the dirty, degenerate, gambling, bottom, mud-sucking world that I normally live in, if I look at both these teams, I rarely wanted to put any money on them one way or the other. It just wasn't worth, I don't think, the investment, and you can cap all you want, and where there's some advantages at time, yeah, but they were so inconsistent that, in leading up to this game, it's still, is it my main play? It's not. This is not my main play. However, in I said, sort of capping here earlier today, I just instead of taking totals, or I just took a result. I think Oklahoma wins this football game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think all signs point to Oklahoma to me. And I think if I had to put reliability and consistency on a quarterback, I would rather have Mateer right now than Simpson, just because I still have that SEC championship game stuck in my head. I think Mateer in the big moments, when Oklahoma earlier in the year, when they went into Tuscaloosa and won, he stepped up in the big moments. Simpson didn't. And I think there's still too much noise around Kalen DeBoer and Alabama. Even though he says he's not going anywhere, that Michigan job still looms. And whether or not he leaves or not, it doesn't matter. It's noise. And again, yeah, the players can block it out and they can say they can block it out. But you're heading into the playoff, and that's really been a lot of the questions about their head coach.
Yeah, they don't need any more distractions because they play distracted.
Yeah,
and so looking at this, I don't have a final score, but if I thought it was like less than a touchdown, I'll take the Sooners.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And then obviously that's the first big game of the weekend. Friday night kicks off, but then it's interesting. We go from one good game to another good game because kicking off the Saturday slate is Miami, who just got in, taking on Texas A&M, who didn't make the SEC championship game. But again, these are the two teams that beat Notre Dame to keep Notre Dame out of the playoff.
Yeah.
And look, everybody wants to talk about, Miami back. Look, I've rooted for the U for a long time. This team isn't even close to any of the teams that went deep in the BCS era, won national championships. I'm not sold on Carson Beck as a quarterback. I'm not sold on Mario Cristobal as a head coach. They got in because they're another inconsistent team. They lost to some teams this year that they shouldn't have lost to. And I look at it, yeah, they're going to have something to prove because there's a lot of people that say they shouldn't be in the playoff right now. But I still think Texas A&M at home with the 12th man, Aggie Nation is going to come out to play. I'm not sure Miami's ready for this atmosphere.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about, game number one, we move to game number two, but there is a bit of a theme here, and that's inconsistencies. Looking at the Aggies and, Marcel Reed and what he does and what he doesn't do. I think he's one of these guys that, when you take a look at what he did down the stretch, there were moments. I mean, they've got Concepcion, who's a fantastic receiver. But you see times where the ball gets forced. They do weird things. They get behind. They've had miraculous comebacks. All the kinds of things, quite frankly, I don't want to see on my team coming down into a game that's this big. Now, I'm also, again, not in love with Carson Beck, him coming over from Georgia. And I thought, okay, let's see what he can do. And he had some games. But again, he's still not necessarily, he's definitely not a gunslinger. I know some people put him in that category. I don't. And there are a lot of people say, he's going to be an NFL quarterback. Well, I think that's the reason he's going to be an NFL quarterback. I don't disagree with it, is because look at the desperation we see on guys who are actually taking snaps on a Sunday. There are times where you're like, oh, I didn't think that guy would be in the show. I didn't think that guy would be playing on a Sunday. But as you see the injuries come into the league, they're bringing back 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. You got to find guys. There is room for maybe a guy like Carson Beck. Again, I don't see him as a starter, maybe not even as a Sunday guy, but you got to get them from somewhere. So he kind of is in that middle ground for me. And they do play better. See, last year with Cam Ward, I mean, they just expected him to go out there. I mean, that's the gunslinger, right? Ultimately, that's a gunslinger. He'd find Restrepo. Now they're buddies, with the Titans, which is kind of interesting to see, even though Restrepo's hurt right now. But they just waited for Cam Ward to throw for another 450 yards so they could win the game because they couldn't stop anybody. They can stop people here. This is a game that is the game of college football, like a lot of football, where you win it in the film room. You win it in seeing what other teams had to do to break you. And I would be just a little, again, there's such an inconsistency with these teams. Like, who's going to make the most turnovers? Like, who's going to get that? Who takes the ball away? And I don't know. I look at this one. I said, well, I'm not gonna take a result because I just really don't know. And yeah, to see the noise they make with down in College Station, it's going to be a great game. But okay. Well, I'll take a look. What I have in terms of now, these are alternates.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put my glasses on here. This is a good look. What am I, a librarian?
Ooh.
Here we go. So I've got Casey
The professor's
Concepcion.
in the house.
Yes.
The professor, Mike Richards, is joining us right now.
The professor of dough and
Yes.
drinking. You take your choice. Concepcion for 40-plus yards. That's alternative receiving, right? So that's I picked that number. It's a super low number, folks. That's very, very low. Malachi Toney is the guy they got to get the ball to as well. 60-plus yards. And then I'm taking Pringle. That's the running back out of Miami for 37.5 yards. That was what his number was, which I thought was fantastic. So that is 4 times your money. Now, again, I have the same game parlay, so it's part of all the other games I won, including last night's crazy NFL game. So I'm looking at a 4. That's 3 players. I got no problem. They're not huge numbers, and both of those teams need those guys to make those numbers to make this a game. I think this game is close. But I maybe want my money to stay in my pocket so I can go to the bar later on. So I'm not picking a result in this one.
No, I like the prop bets because Malachi Toney definitely the big receiver for Carson Beck down there. And again, you said it, inconsistencies. To me, with Miami, is can Carson Beck protect the football? Because the killer turnovers earlier in the season when they lost that stretch 2 or 3 games, this Miami team should have been in the ACC championship game. This Miami team should have ran away with the ACC. They didn't. They, again, killed themselves. But, again, last game of the year, Texas A&M hurt their own chances because they couldn't protect the football and were inconsistent and lost. And they probably should have been in the SEC championship game and weren't. But it didn't really matter because they were in anyway. But I love Mike Elko as a coach. I loved him at Duke. I thought this was a great hire by Texas A&M. He understands how Miami plays. But, again, I agree. You've got to get the ball to Concepcion. He's the best player on Texas A&M. Marcel Reed's got to protect the football. I love all your numbers in that game, by the way. If you want to get your money, take those props. I agree with that.
They're low. Yeah.
Real low. Look for those low numbers. Now, we move to what could be some blowouts. Would you classify?
We're going across the street. Yeah, we're going across the street. If you live in a town that's a little bit rural, you know where the abattoirs are. That's the fancy word for a slaughterhouse. And I think that both of these games, there's going to be blood everywhere. and I do not see these games being close. You can start where you want to start, but these are the two that kind of when the draw came out and they got these, you saw what Ole Miss was going to get and you saw what Oregon was going to get. I'm like, okay, well, it will take a miracle for these things to go sideways. I just don't think they will.
All right, let's start down in Ole Miss. Obviously, we know Lane's not there anymore, but that's okay. They got their interim head coach, but the offensive coordinator is still there. Weiss Jr. is still there. Trinidad Chambliss. They still have their quarterback, by the way. And whatever the prop is on Trinidad Chambliss in this game, please take it because just take it because he's gonna hit. I believe the first game was like 61-7. Like this is gonna be another massacre. Like Wallace the third is a beast. Like Tulane is a good team. Don't get me wrong, but this isn't Boise State when they beat Oklahoma with Chris Peterson's Boise State team when they beat Oklahoma on a Statue of Liberty. Like, this isn't now, don't get me wrong. Tulane has won a bowl game. They won a New Year's Six game a couple of years ago, but this is the playoff. This is Ole Miss. It's a different atmosphere. Home playoff game. These things matter. I just don't see the Green Wave going into Ole Miss and winning this game. I just don't see it. It's just the group of 5 teams, the American, which used to be the Big East, which used to be really good in college football and basketball. But the American, they just don't like the reputation is still there. The year like Cincinnati made it to the Final Four, they deserved it because they were the best, one of the best teams in the nation. Here they got in because the ACC didn't do their job. Same with James Madison. Tulane, they can play well on their level. Yes, they've pulled upsets before. This game is not one of them.
No, it's not. And because of the nature of how the playoffs have been set up where you get a home game. I mean, these aren't neutral site games. So, we're just not used to seeing that because it wasn't a thing. When you played in a bowl game, you played in the MILF.com bowl or the whatever it was,
the Tony Soprano bowl, the Bada Bing bowl, like
the Bada Bing bowl. So now you got to go to someone's place. Now, in this case, you're going to someone's place who completely destroyed you already once. And now you've got a situation where their head coach has left, but we're not uncomfortable with that anymore. Like there was a time, when I first talked to Brian Kelly, he came in studio. So Brian Kelly came in just as he had left Cincinnati and was taking his then dream job at Notre Dame. And so we talked about that. And I said, you recruited these guys. You may have sat in their parents' home and said, I'm going to look after your son. And now you're in a situation where they're going to have their biggest game and you leave. That's the NCAA's fault. They set up that schedule. They've set up what I think is disastrous for the and especially for the bowl games themselves. But in this situation, because coaches have jumped, we've seen them move because they have to move because of when, the designation day of when you have to commit, when the high school kids are committing. So now you got to get in front of that. They should have done it like they do with March Madness or college basketball. Everything's done after. Everything's done after. I realize the seasons are different, but you got to think about it. They didn't. So now we're in a situation where Ole Miss goes, where'd that Lane guy go again? They're like, well, I don't know, but Trinidad, you still want to play? Yeah. What are you going to? I'll put up 300 yards. I don't care. Like, they're in a position to prove that they are still a championship caliber team without Lane Kiffin. So in the bowl games now, as I was sort of alluding to, now it's about motivation. It always kind of has been, but there's definite lines in the sand now, like I was left by our coach, or, these guys are going into the portal, or I'm declaring myself for the NFL. But now you're sitting there, Ole Miss, and they see Tulane come in. Tulane, the game might be slightly closer than it was last time, but they're out to prove that they're just as good without a coach as they were with the coach, because now it's about the program. And for those of you that know how it works in Mississippi, when you're, the alumni for Ole Miss is really strong, and it goes back to like the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is deep in it. You are deep in, old Dixie, if you want to put it that way. So they're coming out with the gunslinging. So what I have is, and I think these numbers are low. Once again, I generally try to get between 3 and 5 times my money. Trinidad Chambliss to throw for 250 yards. Now which he might double that. But again, when it comes to props and blowouts, the fear is they start taking guys off. So that's the only thing you got to be aware of. Either you win by too much or you're getting killed. Either way, guys leave. Now, because it's the playoffs, it's not like you can just kind of leave it out there because next week you're playing Troy, so you don't care. Guys are walking. It's a real challenge, and this is what, betting, this is what the public does. These are as square, I get it. These are very square bets, but here's what I have. So Chambliss for 250 yards. Lacey, in games like this, they love to run the ball. And Kawan Lacey ran for, I think, 150 yards against him last time. So I'm taking 100 yards for laughs. For laughs, I'm going to take Lacey for 100 yards. You mentioned Harrison Wallace III, 60 yards. He could get that in the first half. Like, that's not
first
big
quarter.
money.
He could get that in the first quarter.
First quarter. And then Deshaun Stribling, another receiver for 30 yards. I mean, these are garbage yards almost. But
Yeah.
I'm looking at it saying, how long do they keep the guys in? Are they going to start pulling guys somewhere at the end of the third quarter, maybe fourth quarter? So if you start going for the numbers you think they're going to get, 70 yards, 100 yards, I just think they will continue to run the ball. I don't think he comes out a whole bunch. That's a 4.76. That's almost 5 times your money. It's not worth it to take either. Obviously, the money line's not. I'm not even big on the point spread. But if I can get 5 times my money out of this slaughterhouse, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, I agree. I think like Tulane could keep it close early just because feeling out process. You haven't played since week 1. Tulane's going to come in there to prove something. But I think like Wallace could get that on a first quarter touchdown, a 60-yard bomb by Trinidad and Chambliss. And Chambliss can run the football. Don't forget that. He's a dual threat quarterback. So if there's running yards to get for Trinidad Chambliss, not only his passing yards, I would take that as well. But I agree with you. This is a game for me. If I was betting it, I'd be wary because third quarter, if Ole Miss is up huge, they're going to want to rest their guys come for the next round because they're not going to want to get hurt because you got to go on the road. Now you got to get yourself ready for the big games because you don't want to get anybody hurt when you say you got to go take on an Ohio State or a Texas Tech or an Indiana or Georgia. You don't want to have your guys hurt. So, yeah, I think even though some people might say the professor might be a little conservative here, the professor is being a genius because you take low in blowout games.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. If I was going to be sharper, I could find some numbers, maybe even the point spread. But, the fact is sometimes, and this is what I always talk about, is there are numbers there that are just very obvious. You just take them. If the game is going to be tight, you can go a little sharper. Maybe I don't think that, Marcel Reed's going to throw for X amount of, yards. Then I guess I can go hard. Or Carson Beck, who sometimes may not throw for 200 yards, right? He may not.
Yeah.
Depends on how the ground game is going. But I feel in some of these scenarios, especially the blowout games, I'm looking, obviously, the team that's going to win and what they need to do and what they might do early, thinking that guys are coming off possibly, early, mid-fourth quarter or whatever it is, but they may not get a full game. So what does a 3-quarter game look like? And quite frankly, sometimes what does a half game look like? I know they're not going to do that because they've waited so long and they got to get out and they play. The coaches want to see them play. But I'm sticking with those numbers, even though, yes, they are square and yes, they are public.
That's okay. Who cares if they're square? Yo, it's hip to be square. Great song, by the way. It's a great song, by the way. Hip to be square. But now we got to move final game. Luckily for the NFL, because they play on Saturday night too, because they got Bears and Packers. Luckily for the NFL, that game goes up against Oregon and James Madison. Because if it was Oregon and somebody else, the NFL might have issues with their ratings. Because if it was Oregon and, say, Miami or another team, I don't know if the NFL is going to win the weekend. But they're lucky. It's going to be the Oregon Ducks, Stan Lanning, probably one of my favorite head coaches in college football. I would play for that guy. Sometimes he is a little too aggressive for my liking. I'm going to be honest. As much as I like him as a head coach, there are situations where I'm watching the game and I just write down on my notebook, take the points. Just take points. Especially in those tight games. The best game he coached actually was against Penn State earlier in the year before Penn State took a nosedive. Yep. But he actually took points and was conservative and didn't he learned from the Washington games a couple of years ago where he was always just going for it, and it always backfired on him. But here he can go for it and it's probably not going to backfire on him. So he can go on fourth down as much as he wants, especially inside the red zone because he's going to do it with Dante Moore and company. It's James Madison against the Oregon Ducks, your Oregon Ducks. And look, James Madison's a great underdog story. They're there because of the rules. Should they be there? Probably not. But they're there because the rules. This is what the committee set up.
This is what it says.
This is what it says. So we can debate it about whether or not they are on an equal playing field. Doesn't matter. They're in the game. If this was on a neutral site, I'm still taking Oregon by a runaway game. The fact that it's at home, it's even more of a blowout because the Ducks don't lose at home. They just don't.
No. Autzen Stadium, I can tell you, as 8th grader, I did have season tickets, which was awesome, in the rain every Saturday. And sometimes you mentioned Dan Lanning. Sometimes watching the Ducks, it's a little bit like watching the Detroit Lions. It's like, oh my God, they're going to go for it. All of a sudden they're just deciding they're just going to do it, which is kind of fun, but also it's like watching your favorite uncle, who's a drunk, chasing a balloon on the edge of a cliff. You're just like, I don't know if I can watch this. This is crazy. But I think in this circumstance, and again, you talk about the mismatch and how the playoffs work. Look, it may not be perfect, but until you tell me or show me the way that is better than this is what we have to work with. So when you see teams like Notre Dame, who might have a fair argument on why they should be there, I tend to like the way that Vanderbilt looked at it, and their head coach, who they said, because he had Diego Pavia, and you had, just a tremendous season. And he said, yeah, okay, because we knew the games that we had to win and didn't do that. Like, the accountability is on us. So if we had taken care of business in those games, what we really had to do to have a playoff game, we didn't do that. So that's what we got to change for next year. Jimmy, when I hear guys talk like that, I'm like, okay, that's a program now. All of a sudden, I'm attracted to this program. I saw what they did this year. I see that kind of accountability. If I have a son who's going to commit to a school, I'm like, depending on the part of the country you're in, or depending, what your son's athletic skills are, I'm all of a sudden saying I wouldn't mind seeing my son go to that school, because that's the kind of school and the kind of program that is building. They're not pointing their finger. They're not complaining that it was someone else's or the system is against us. They're saying if we had done X and Y, we'd be in the playoff as the current playoff structure stands.
Yep.
So that's what you have to get with. So I was real impressed with that. So looking at what Oregon's got to do, now there's a couple of things at play. Number one, they're having a home game in Autzen Stadium in December. So, okay, so like never happened ever, because that never existed. Like, it's just too weird. I don't know what the weather will be like, but having lived there is the potential to be a little chilly and wet. But if it's not, it should be okay. It generally isn't the snow. You're not getting snow. It's not like a weird thing that's going to happen in, like New Mexico, where you come out one day and it's all of a sudden there's snow all over the place. It's not going to be one of those. But what it's going to be is almost a make good when they had 25 days off to get into the Rose Bowl, face Ohio State, and get completely run over. There's no way that coaching staff or those that were a part of that team aren't forgetting what that felt like. Now, Ohio State goes on to win the championship. They're obviously still championship caliber. If someone said, well, I think Ohio State's going to be the number one team, a lot of people probably aren't going to argue. It's a solid argument. There's certainly a lot of evidence there for that. But when you get lit up like that in the granddaddy of bowl games, it was just so humiliating. And I think that they've had almost as much time off. They've had, I think, like 21 days or whatever it's been. So they're going to get a talking to from a coach who takes this very seriously, and they will lie in front of a train for this head coach. So, this whole taking guys off the field, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Like, it depends on how bad this thing and how quickly it gets out of hand. But James Madison hasn't seen anything like Oregon.
No.
They've never seen a team this big. They've never seen a team this fast. I think the most challenging, or the only game of substance they had, was against Louisville. So that really isn't in the same universe as this.
No, it's not. The ACC and the Big Ten are just not in the same category anymore.
No.
Not even close.
No. So the way I look at it, I mean, I think the number's hanging around minus 21.5. There'll be many people who will take that number. I'm not interested in that number. I'm going back to the same formula that I'm using for Ole Miss, which is I believe it's going to be either blowout, potential blowout, however you want to put it, a 3-touchdown victory, those kinds of things. So I'm like, what does it take for Oregon to be up by 3 touchdowns? Well, let's start with Whittington. I'm going to go back to the smart classes for the audience. They love it.
They do love it. They do love the professors in town.
Yeah, that's right. When I start talking like that, I'm starting to sound a little bit like somebody else. They really love what I do. They really do. They love it. I'm so smart. I'm smarter than everybody else. Okay, here we go. It's Whittington. Now, again, these are alternate numbers, which means I am making these numbers up, the numbers that I want. This is, by the way, on FanDuel. So I'm doing this off of FanDuel. I'm taking Whittington for 80 yards and Davison for 40. Now, the actual number probably is like 88 yards for Whittington and almost 50 for Davidson. So they're a little bit under, but they are not afraid to pound the ball. And I think that offensive line is going to find these guys some huge holes. They might get that, someone's going to pop one and they're going to have their numbers by the first half if they have to. The only one that I'm a little nervous of is the last two, which is Dante Moore for 225 yards. If they start to run and James Madison can't stop them, folks, you know how football works. If I can impose my will on you and I don't even have to throw the ball, I won't. So that's the only thing, that's the only caveat to this. He can throw for 225 against this team, but will he? If he does, if he's going to throw for 225 and play more or less like three quarters, then I think Kenyon Sadiq, who's a great receiver for them, does a marvelous job. I've got him for 50 yards. Once again, that's alternative yards. And believe it or not, those four props pay 8-8. It's 8 times your money. So for that, if I'm looking at an ROI, then 8 times my money with the 3.5 or 4 with the 5. That's just on the college games. I'm for that. So once again, with a little bit of a feeling of how quickly does this thing get out of hand, and do they keep those guys on the field? Because of their experience with Ohio State, and they haven't played for like 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks, I think Lanning's going to say, we're going to go out there and we're going to play. So if we win 72-3 or whatever it is, then maybe that's what we do this time. That isn't so much how college used to be played like that, where if Ohio State put up and played East Carolina and put up 72 points, then I got to make sure I win by more than 72. It kind of doesn't work that as much as it did. Coaches aren't quite as mean as they used to be. And in this circumstance, but I don't know. So I'm kind of hoping, it's Roman times and I'm heading to the Coliseum to watch the Lions take on the Christians. It's go, Lions, go. Go, Lions, go. Sorry, Christians, but I'm on the Lions in this one. In this case, the Lions are Ducks.
Yeah, the Ducks. I mean, look, I agree with you. Like back in the day during the old AP voting system, the BCS era, even in the 14 playoffs, style points mattered. And style points still kind of matter. But it depends on who the Ducks line up against and for their next game, right? And if they win, they're going to want to send a message to whoever their next opponent is. Be like, did you just see what they did? They just hung a 70 spot in the first game. Like, these guys are coming. We're going where to play these dudes? Yeah, I do expect, like, Dan Lanning to me is a guy who's a ruthless coach. He would put up a 70 spot on James Madison. Like, he'd be like one of those coaches to be like, yeah, these guys don't belong here. Like, we're going to show them that they don't belong on our field. Like, he'll put, like, it's not worth winning if you can't win big. Like, he's that kind of coach. Like, he really is.
I hope you're my kind of coach, because I love what you say right now. Maybe I'll hire you.
I will pound my opponent into submission if I'm playing them. Like, I will do it. Like, I do not care. I will win as big as possible. I do not care. I'm the type of guy where if we're playing a hockey game and your goalie doesn't show up on time and you have 6 skaters, I'm putting $5 in the open net and I don't care. Like, I'm winning the game. I do not care.
That was Gretzky. That was Gretzky, and talking with his teammates. They'd be up by 6 goals, and he'd walk into the room and goes, "Okay, fellas, we got them right where we want them. Now let's really put our foot down on their throat." He was like that way, and I get that, because that's the competitive nature that makes me, as the competitor, say, "I don't want to play these guys. No. I don't want any part of these guys."
No, and I think if you look at it, you can see the only game the first 2 games, you can definitely see potential where the road team goes in and wins. But the last 2 games, the home team is winning, and they're winning convincingly. Like, to me, if you're gonna look at it, where you're gonna win your money, and you can disagree with me on this, but where you're gonna win your money is the last 2 games of the football on Saturday in the Ole Miss and in the Oregon games.
They're going to kind of, in a weird way, mirror each other, because they have very similar scenarios. In fact, you could even argue that Ole Miss maybe even has a hand up, because they have already destroyed Tulane. There's nothing that Tulane can do that they haven't seen. I mean, Oregon obviously is not going to see James Madison through the year, but I don't think they have to. I mean, they're even a different size athlete, quite frankly. The question really is, how much blood are they going to spill on the Coliseum floor? And you're right. If they have decided that because of a much bigger game that's coming afterwards, that they want to show that they're just lopping off heads in the previous game, then these things could get bloody, and they'll get bloody fast.
Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Richards. It's been a pleasure here to talk some college football. The professor is laying down his locks of the week for you. And hey, Mike, tell the audience where they can find you and all of your great work.
Well, for those, certainly if you're in Canada, you can hear us on the Sportsnet digital network as the show runs on Sundays at, that would be noon Eastern, 10 Mountain Time, and gets blasted all over the place. And then as a podcast. So wherever you get your podcast. Now, if you have Spotify, it's a TV show. Like, you can see the whole thing. If you really want to see, the Pierre Maguires of the world. When it came to baseball, you had, Buck Martinez was on, Jamie Campbell there, the top guys for the Blue Jays when they were in the World Series. So you get to see these conversations. It's more or less a TV show. So Spotify's a big one, obviously Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, as they say, wherever fine podcasts are available.
Yes, and don't forget, when it comes to being the best in the business at what they do, well, Mike Richards and his personalities are the best in the business at what he does. Guys, follow him, follow his show. He's a great friend of mine, and I needed to get him on the College Football Podcast because we just had to do this. It's been too long.
Yeah, no, it's been too long, and we've been threatening to go to a Rutgers game or something.
We have been.
Because we'll just go to Rutgers, and I'll just start drinking heavily early in the morning because it probably gets out of hand. And just a reminder, the show starts again January the 11th. The new season starts January the 11th.
Well, guys, this has been Round Campus College Football Podcast. We got Mike Richards in the house. It's going to be a collab with on my YouTube page, on Specialty Media, and his as well. You guys want to get your action in before the football gets kicked off in Norman on Friday night, and enjoy the games on Saturday. Guys, Jim Biringer, Mike Richards, take care.